Whoopi spoke first. Her tone was sharp, confident, like someone used to commanding stages. "Captain Traoré," she began, "you talk about revolution, independence, fighting colonial influence, but isn't that just another form of dictatorship? Isn't power always dangerous when held too tightly?" The audience murmured. Some nodded, others waited. Traoré looked up, his gaze steady. He didn't rush to answer. That was his way. Calm, deliberate, powerful, without noise. "Madam," he said quietly, "power becomes dangerous only when it serves the few. In my country, it serves the people." The simplicity hit hard. Even Whoopi paused. Cameras zoomed in, his face steady, his voice grounded in conviction. She leaned forward. "So you're saying," she pressed, "that your way, taking control, replacing old systems, is freedom?" Traoré nodded slowly. "Freedom," he said, "isn't given, it's taken. And when the people have been chained for centuries, you cannot ask them to whisper when it's time to roar." There was silence, then applause. Not planned, just spontaneous. Whoopi smiled slightly. "That's poetic," she said. "But the world isn't built on poetry, Captain. It's built on compromise, on laws, on systems. You break them, chaos follows." He smiled back. "Madam Whoopi, the systems you speak of weren't built by us. They were built on us." Gasps. A murmur rolled through the audience. Even the cameraman froze for a moment, zooming in tighter. The tension shifted. What started as an interview now felt like a reckoning. Whoopi adjusted her chair. "I understand your pain," she said. "History hasn't been kind, but you can't lead with rage." Traoré's eyes softened. "It's not rage," he said. "It's memory. You see, in your movies revolution is romantic. In our lives, it's survival." The words sank deep. People watching at home tweeted instantly, "He's not speaking politics. He's speaking truth." Minutes passed. The conversation turned to faith, culture, and the meaning of leadership. Whoopi asked, "Do you ever fear becoming the very thing you fight against?" Traoré looked down for a moment, thoughtful. "Yes," he said. "Every leader must. Power tests the soul. But the difference is, I have seen children die because power was in the wrong hands. That memory keeps me human." Whoopi's eyes softened. For the first time, her voice lowered. "You speak with pain and pride, both heavy things." Traoré smiled faintly. "They are the same, madame. Pain is pride remembered." The line echoed through the hall like poetry. A producer whispered to Whoopi through her earpiece, "We're trending #1. Keep it going." But Whoopi was no longer performing. She was listening. "You remind me," she said quietly, "of the movements in America, of Malcolm, of Martin. But even they faced betrayal. The people they fought for sometimes turned against them." Traoré nodded. "That's the cost of truth. The first thing truth kills is comfort." Whoopi looked down. For a moment, the camera caught her reflection in the table glass. Thoughtful, emotional. This was no longer TV. It was history unfolding. Break. Commercial time was supposed to start, but the network director signaled, "Keep rolling." The studio audience leaned in. Traoré continued, almost in a whisper, "My grandmother used to say, if you want to feed your people, grow courage before you grow crops." I didn't understand her then. Now I do, because courage is the first seed. Whoopi's lips parted, almost to reply, but she didn't. For once, silence said everything. Outside, millions were watching on phones, TVs, cafes, in Ouagadougou, New York, Lagos, Karachi. Memes started. Quotes spread. Edits appeared online. I lead without applause. Pain is pride remembered. Truth kills comfort. 3 lines, and a global storm. That night Whoopi ended the show differently. She didn't summarize, didn't joke. She looked at the camera and said, "Sometimes an interview changes you. Tonight, I met a man who doesn't just talk about leadership, He carries it. The crowd applauded, but Traoré didn't move. He just stood, nodded once, and said, "Thank you, madam, for listening." As the lights dimmed, she whispered, barely audible to the mic, "Maybe it's time we all did." After the lights, the red light on the camera blinked twice, then turned off. The applause faded. Crew members exhaled in relief. But inside that studio, Kacho Hai Hawathi, heavy, reflective, like the air after a storm, Whoopi removed her earpiece slowly. She looked across the table at Traoré, who was now standing quietly, hands clasped behind his back, military posture, but eyes gentle. For a long second, no one spoke. The producers were whispering, journalists were gathering notes, but between them, just silence. Whoopi finally said, softly, "You know, Captain, I've interviewed presidents, actors, even war heroes, but you spoke like a poet." Traoré smiled faintly. "In my country," he said, "poetry isn't written with ink. It's written with scars." Whoopi paused, words caught in her throat. She could feel something shift inside her. Not pity, not admiration, but a quiet understanding. "Scars," she repeated, almost to herself. "You carry them well." He shook his head. "No one carries them well, madame. We just learn not to drop them." As they walked off set, the noise of the crew faded behind them. A young intern ran up. "Captain, sir, can I take a photo?" Traoré nodded politely. The flash went off bright, harsh. For a moment, the light reflected off his eyes, and Whoopi saw something she hadn't noticed before. Fatigue. Not the kind that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from fighting too long. They reached the hallway, quiet, dimly lit. Whoopi slowed her pace. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked. Traoré looked ahead. "Every day," he said, "but tired people built nations, so I rest standing." Whoopi smiled sadly. "That's heavy." He turned to her, his expression firm but kind. "You asked me earlier if I fear becoming what I fight. The truth is, I already am, because every leader carries a shadow, and the moment you forget it's there, it consumes you." Whoopi stopped walking. That line, it hit her deeper than she expected. "Then why do you keep doing it?" she asked. "Why not? Just live your life. You've earned peace." He looked at her, the corners of his mouth softening. "Because peace," he said, "means something different to us. For you, it's silence. For us, it's dignity." They reached the exit door. Outside, camera flashes and microphones were waiting, reporters shouting questions, lights flickering like lightning. But before stepping out, Traoré turned to Whoopi and said something quietly. "Madam, today wasn't a debate. It was a mirror. The world saw itself, it just didn't like the reflection." And then, he walked out into the crowd. That night, social media exploded. Clips of their conversation flooded every platform. On Twitter, now X, #TRAOREVs, Whoopi trended worldwide. YouTubers made analysis videos. Podcasters debated the meaning of "truth kills comfort." Some praised Whoopi's questions, others called her out. But everyone agreed on one thing. Something real had happened on that stage. In New York cafes, people argued. In Ouagadougou, students painted murals of Traoré, with quotes from the interview. In classrooms, teachers replayed clips, asking their students, what is leadership? And yet, amid all the chaos, one small moment went unnoticed. After the show, late at night, Whoopi sat alone in her dressing room. No makeup, no cameras, just reflection. On her table lay a small folded note. It wasn't there before. Someone had slipped it under the door. She opened it. It was written in neat, steady handwriting. "Thank you for listening, IT." That's all it said. But beneath it was a small hand-drawn symbol. A tree. Roots deep, branches wide. Whoopi stared at it for minutes. Then she whispered, "The tree of courage," and smiled. Days later, An email arrived from Burkina Faso's embassy. They invited her to visit the country, not as a celebrity, but as a guest of the youth movement. At first, she hesitated. She was 69, tired of flights, of politics, of microphones. But something inside her said, "Go." So she did. When she landed in Ouagadougou, the air was dry and warm. Crowds gathered, waving flags, smiling. A group of children held a banner that read, "We lead without applause." Whoopi covered her mouth, tears welling up. These were the words Traoré had said, and now they were on the lips of a generation. That evening they met again, this time not in a studio, but under the open African sky. No lights, no cameras, just 2 chairs, a wooden table, and a pot of tea. Whoopi said, "The world thinks our exchange was a fight." Traoré smiled. It was a conversation the world needed to overhear. They both laughed softly. Then silence again, but it was a peaceful one. "Do you ever feel lonely?" Whoopi asked. Traoré took a sip of tea, gazing at the stars. "Yes," he said, "but loneliness is the tax of purpose." Whoopi nodded slowly. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "And painful." He smiled. "Yes, but pain," he said, "is just proof that you're still alive enough to care." Later that night, as she prepared to leave, Traoré handed her a small wooden carving, the same tree symbol from his note. "It's not decoration," he said. "It's a reminder that every branch you see grew from something buried." Whoopi held it tight. For the first time in years, she felt inspired, not by fame or applause, but by truth. When she returned to America, her next talk show opened differently. No jokes, no celebrity gossip, just one question, asked directly to the camera. "What does leadership mean to you when no one is watching?" And across the world, from Harlem to Harare, from Karachi to Kigali, people listened, because somewhere between Whoopi and Traoré, a conversation had turned into a movement. The echo heard around the world. The year moved fast. News cycles came and went, scandals, politics, new films, but that one exchange refused to fade. Clips from the Whoopi-Traoré debate were still going viral months later, subtitled in dozens of languages. A phrase born in a quiet studio had now become a global slogan: "Truth kills comfort." In African universities, students wrote it on protest banners. In Europe, journalists quoted it in op-eds about corruption and power. In America, teachers used it in classrooms as a reminder that real freedom begins with discomfort. Whoopi never expected this. She wasn't an activist anymore. She was a storyteller, an entertainer. But now, every time she stepped onto a stage, people wanted to talk about him. "Whoopi," one host asked, "did you mean to start a revolution?" She laughed softly. "No," she said. "I just asked a question and listened to the answer." But privately, she was changing. She started reading about Burkina Faso, its people, its struggles, its history of resistance. Every article felt like a window opening inside her. One night, on her balcony in New York, she scrolled through messages from people around the world. One caught her eye. "Madam Whoopi, I watched your interview from a refugee camp. Captain Traoré's words made me believe that our pain means something. Thank you for letting him speak." A young mother, Sudan. Whoopi put her phone down and stared into the city lights. All her life she'd chased applause, but this was different. This was purpose. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, something powerful was unfolding. Young people, inspired by the exchange, began organizing community projects. They called it the Tree Initiative, named after the symbol Traoré had given Whoopi. The movement wasn't political. It was simple. Plant trees. Teach children. Feed the hungry. Speak truth, even when it hurts. Within months, it spread to 18 African countries. Graffiti appeared on city walls. "We lead without applause." Traoré had never planned it. He didn't even brand it, but it became his legacy. One morning, His advisor entered the presidential office. "Sir, the United Nations has requested your presence. They want you and Ms. Goldberg to speak together, a joint address on global leadership." Traoré paused, setting aside his pen. He looked out the window at the rising sun. "Tell them," he said, "if she accepts, I will come." In New York, Whoopi received the same invitation. Her team was skeptical. "It's risky," they warned. "It's politics. You're an entertainer, not a diplomat." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the problem," she said. "We've left truth only for politicians. Look where that got us." "And so," she said, "yes." The UN Assembly, the second meeting. The hall was massive. Flags from 193 nations lined the walls. Reporters filled every seat, cameras flashing. The world waited for a reunion that had begun with questions and was now returning with answers. Whoopi walked in first, calm, graceful, but visibly nervous. Traoré entered moments later, dressed in his signature brown uniform. When their eyes met, both smiled, the kind of smile that says we've been through storms. The Secretary General introduced them. Two voices, one from the art of storytelling, one from the battlefield of leadership, who reminded the world that truth can still move hearts. Then the mic was theirs. Whoopi spoke first. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but emotion. "I came here today," she said, "not as a celebrity, but as a student, because sometimes the teacher you didn't expect walks into your life and shows you the mirror." She paused. Cameras clicked. She looked toward Traoré. "When I met this man, I thought I was interviewing a leader. I didn't know I was meeting a movement." Applause filled the room. Traoré stepped forward. He began in his quiet, powerful tone, the same calm that had shaken millions. "I am not here to speak for Africa," he said. "I am here to speak for every person who has been told their dreams are too small for the world." The hall went still. He continued, "We have spent centuries learning how to obey. Maybe now it's time to learn how to believe." Whoopi closed her eyes. She could feel it again, that same energy from the studio night. He turned toward her. "Madame Whoopi," he said, "you once asked if freedom can be born from fire. I say yes, because it already has. The fire you saw was not destruction. It was dawn." The entire UN Assembly stood in applause. Delegates wiped tears. For a moment, even the cold machinery of politics felt human again. Afterward, as they exited the hall, a journalist called out, "Captain Traoré, what do you think made this message resonate worldwide?" He smiled. "Because," he said, "people are tired of noise. They are hungry for truth, even if it burns their tongue." That night, major news outlets replayed their joint speech across continents. Headlines read, "From Hollywood to Ouagadougou, a conversation that changed the world." But behind the glamour, something even deeper was happening. Whoopi and Traoré had become unlikely friends, bonded not by fame, but by faith in humanity. They began working together on a documentary, not about politics, but about listening, titled The Courage to Hear. Months later, the documentary premiered online. Millions watched. The closing line became legendary. "Leadership is not when people follow you. It's when they find themselves through you." But the story didn't end there. In a small village in Burkina Faso, a young girl, barely 12, stood under a newly planted tree. Her teacher asked, "Do you know who inspired this movement?" She nodded proudly. "Yes, the soldier and the storyteller." And as the wind blew through the branches, she whispered the words that had crossed oceans. "Truth kills comfort, but it grows freedom." The test of truth. A year had passed since that unforgettable UN speech. The world had moved forward, but something had shifted permanently. The word leadership no longer meant suits and microphones. It meant truth, sacrifice, and courage. People had started planting more than trees. They were planting hope. The Tree Initiative had reached over 30 countries. Schools in Ghana taught about the exchange. In Pakistan, College students held open dialogues titled Speak Truth Without Fear, and in America, Whoopi's documentary was now required viewing in dozens of universities. But behind the scenes, the real test was coming. The storm in Burkina Faso, it began quietly, whispers of unrest, rumors of a coup. Foreign interests, old powers, and local rivals had started pushing back. Traoré's stance against exploitation had made him enemies, powerful ones. One evening, he stood on the balcony of the presidential compound. The sky was bruised purple, half night, half storm. His advisor entered urgently. "Sir, the military council is divided. Some want negotiations with the foreign companies again." Traoré didn't turn. He just said softly, "And the others? They follow you, but they're afraid." He finally turned. "Then they don't follow me. They follow their fear." Later that night, he sat alone at his desk. The wooden carving of the tree, the one he'd given Whoopi, was still there, its twin lying thousands of miles away in New York. He ran his fingers over the roots carved into the base. A knock came at the door. It was a young soldier, nervous, eyes down. "Sir, I have orders to escort you to the council chamber." Traoré stood calmly. "So it begins," he whispered. The council meeting was tense. Generals argued. Papers slammed. Voices rose. "Captain," one shouted, "your policies have isolated us. The people are starving for trade." Traoré replied quietly, "No, they are starving because trade was never made for them." The room went silent. Another general stood. "We must restore relations with the West, or face collapse." Traoré looked him in the eye. "Then we'll stand, because collapse built on dignity is better than wealth built on chains." But he saw it, the flicker of betrayal in the man's eyes. The decision had already been made. That night, the coup began. Gunfire echoed in the distance. The streets filled with confusion. Traoré's guards rushed him toward a safe corridor beneath the compound. "Sir, we have to move," one shouted. But he stopped. "No," he said. "If I run tonight, everything I've said becomes a lie." He walked back up the stairs, straight into the storm. Meanwhile, in New York, Whoopi woke up to breaking news. Attempted coup in Burkina Faso. Fate of President Traoré, unknown. Her phone buzzed endlessly. Calls from journalists, producers, friends. But she ignored them all. She sat on the edge of her bed, shaking, tears in her eyes. The carving, that same wooden tree, sat on her table. She held it tight. "Don't you dare fall," she whispered. "Not now." The broadcast hours later, international channels showed chaotic scenes. Soldiers, smoke, shouting. Then suddenly, the feed switched. A single live image appeared. Traoré standing in the main square. No guards. No army. Just him and the people. His voice was calm, broadcast through old loudspeakers. "You can take my title. You can silence my speech. But you cannot bury the seed that's already growing in every young heart. Because leadership is not in this uniform. It's in every person who dares to stand when fear says sit." The crowd roared. Soldiers hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. Some joined him. In that moment, the coup fell apart. Not by force, but by faith. Whoopi's response back in New York. Whoopi watched the footage live on air. She was invited to speak on international media. The host said, "You've known him personally. Do you think he'll survive this?" She looked straight into the camera, her eyes fierce, voice trembling with fire. "He already has. Because survival isn't breathing, it's being remembered for something true. And that man gave the world its reflection. We can't unsee it now." The clip went viral again, viewed by over 200 million people in 24 hours. And across the world, crowds began chanting in unison, "Truth kills comfort." After the storm, the coup failed. Traoré remained in power, not because of politics, but because of the people. Days later, he appeared on television, tired, but alive. My brothers and sisters, he said, you have proven that courage is not taught, it's remembered. And if we can remember who we are, the world cannot forget us. He ended the speech with a simple line: plant something, anything that will outlive your fear. Months passed. Peace slowly returned. Whoopi visited Burkina Faso again, not as a guest this time, but as family. When she arrived, the streets were lined with banners showing the Tree Initiative's new motto: Roots of Courage, Branches of Truth. She found Traoré in a rural school, surrounded by children. He was kneeling, teaching them how to plant seedlings. She smiled. You really meant it when you said every seed matters. He looked up, smiling softly. Yes, he said, because no matter how small the seed, the sky never asks its size before it gives light. That evening they sat under the largest tree in the village, one planted the year their first interview aired. Its roots were deep now, its branches wide. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying memories of everything they'd said, everything they'd fought for. Whoopi asked, do you ever wonder what history will remember? Traoré looked at the horizon. History will forget names, he said, but it never forgets truth. As night fell, the villagers lit lanterns beneath the tree. Children sang songs written from the quotes that had once trended online. And there, in the glow of those tiny flames, Whoopi realized something profound. The revolution had never been political. It was spiritual. A reminder that when two people from two different worlds dare to listen instead of argue, the universe itself listens too. Epilogue. Years later, Whoopi Goldberg passed away peacefully years later, surrounded by family. On her desk was the wooden carving, now cracked with age, still beautiful. Her diary had one final entry, written in shaky handwriting. He taught me that courage doesn't roar, it roots. In Burkina Faso, Traoré grew older too. The movement continued, led by young voices, who never even saw the first interview live, but felt it in their souls. Every year, on the anniversary of the exchange, people worldwide planted a tree, one for truth, one for courage, one for unity. And under the shade of those trees, children would ask, who started all this? Their teachers would smile and say, a storyteller asked a question.